let me know when you see it. You should see it here in a few seconds. Should see part 13. You might see Ordinance today 13 first, and then you're going to see Ordinance 13. Just one person let me know when you see it.
Ordinance 13. Just one person let me know when you see it.
You all should, somebody should see it right now.
Somebody should see it right now.
Do you all see it? Anybody see it?
I see it says Ordinance Part 13. Is it going to be a slide or is it just going to say Ordinance Part 13?
That's it. Ordinance Part 13. That's it.
Okay. It's there.
It's there? Okay. Very good.
It's there.
Okay. All right. So, and then I'm going to go to this next slide, which is a slide that we pretty much stay on all the time. If it'll let me go to it. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. So in this one here, you all probably can see it pretty good. You all probably actually see it better than I do. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I can see it here. Okay, we way down to Leviticus 25. And this is talking about this Jubilee. I want to thank y'all for giving me the time to look at this, and I'm still looking through the other chapters. Like the other 2 chapters is left, and it's been it's been a long time on this, and I think it's going to wind up being longer than I thought, even more so, because I don't want to rush through this here, through these jubilees, and it's quite a few chapters. Quite a few verses. With this Leviticus 25. We got how many? We got 55 verses, so we got a bunch of verses. And then in chapter 26, we have 46 verses. And then chapter 27, we have 34. So we still got quite a few verses left to cover in 3 chapters. So I don't want to rush in these last 3. So we're just going to take our time, and I believe this is going to wind up being longer than I anticipated. I know I told you it's going to be 19 parts, but I don't know. I'm going to stop giving a number to it now because it just fluctuates. Because just as I study, I come up with more and more information and stuff, and then sometimes it just escalates. This is one of these ones here. It just seems like it just escalates. So, what I want to do here in chapter 25, just want to start off by reading, let's see what we want to do here. We want to read just the first 7 verses. I just want to read the first 7 verses, and then I just want to kind of get a prelude before we start going from the other verses. And like I said, no way we're going to cover all this tonight. It may take 2 or 3 nights to cover this, but whatever it takes, it takes. So, does somebody want to start reading? Reading chapter 25, 1 through 7, and you could, if you want to, you could take 2 verses apiece, if you want to, or 3, however you want to read it. I'll leave it up to you all.
Okay, I can read. You say all the first 7, correct?
It's the first 7. That's what we're going to stay on in the beginning here and see how far we get to.
I don't mind reading all 7. I'll read all 7.
All right.
Leviticus 25, 1 through 7. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Yahuwah. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for Yahuwah. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard. That which groweth of its own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee and for thy servant, and for thy maid, and for thy hired servant, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee, and for thy cattle, and for thy beasts that are in thy land, shall all the increase thereof be meat.
Be meat. Okay. So let's start off with talking about some key factors here. When the children of Israel came into the land of Yah that he gave them, he said, Then shall the land keep the Sabbath unto Yahuwah. You all pretty well remember that to a certain extent, because if you look at the reciprocal of 2 Chronicles 36, you can understand it more better as we go through this Jubilee. This is just one of the pieces that would help a little bit understand how Yah looked at the land as well as an importance in the institution of what he gave the children of Israel to partake of. I want to go over to 2 Chronicles, and you've heard, we talked about this before, 2 Chronicles chapter 36. All the wickedness that the children of Israel were doing, well, actually it was Judah, but they're out of the tribe of Israel, out of the tribe of Jacob. It's chapter 36, and you look at verse 21. When I look at this Jubilees, I get an even clearer understanding why verse 21, why it was said, what Jeremiah said there in verse 21 in chapter 30, 2 Chronicles chapter 36. To fulfill the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath, to fulfill 60 years, that's 70 years. But in this verse, it's specifically talking about the land keeping its Sabbaths. That's because the inhabitants which Yah had placed on that land was disobedient. And you're going to find some things, I don't know if we're going to talk about it today or not, you're going to find some things in this chapter 25 that lets us know what Yah had told them, had promised them safety if they was obedient. And if they didn't, then he took them out of that land, which what he did here when he brought the Babylonians in. But this Jubilee really, I mean, when I read that verse right there, and I think about Jubilee, you all will see as we go along how Yah treated the land. Of course, he treated the people more than the land, but all of it was part of it. Because you all know the verse that says that in Psalms 24:1, you know, Psalms 24:1 gives us a good view as to what Yah thinks of this earth and think of everything on this earth. He makes it clear there in 24:1. He says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. So this earth is his, and they that dwell in this earth, the people as well. People disobeyed, they was taken off the land and brought into captivity. So, going back to Leviticus 25. Going back to Leviticus 25. And I'm going to start there with the verses here. Verse 1 to 3. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land. So remember, this is in Leviticus. So they're still in their wilderness journey. They have not even, they pretty much haven't even gotten to close to where Moab, Ammon, and Edom is at. I mean, they really haven't gotten there close to where to cross the Jordan yet. So they hadn't gotten too close yet. Because you see more of that when you get to Deuteronomy. But speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Yahuwah. You know, that's another thing. When we read this chapter 25, we'll see, especially in the beginning and in a few other places, we'll see in this chapter 25 really how important the Sabbath is to Yahuwah. So those that's going around neglecting it, they need to read this chapter 25 and they'll see how important it is. But anyway, verse 3, 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. Now you guys think about this for a second. It says 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years shalt thou sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. I do want to read verse 4. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest. 7th year should be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for Yahuwah. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. There are so many, I can't even begin to tell you. And we're going to try to cover some if we can, because when we get to the new covenant, we really start probably talking about it even more than what we're doing now. But there's so many Ruach messages in this Jubilee. Way more than I had imagined. It's a lot more that we can apply to Yahushua in dealing with the Jubilees. Now, of course, I'm not saying that we are supposed to keep the Jubilee as they kept it. But I am saying there's things contained within this Jubilee that I believe once we get through this whole chapter, you guys will recognize how some of this applies to us today. That we can take pieces of it. We can apply it today, but we'll eventually get to all that. But it's important to recognize that. It says here, but 6 years thou shalt sow thy field. So in 6 years, they were to sow the field. In other words, they out farming. 6 years they did that. Then verse 4 says, but on the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Yahuwah. Thou shalt neither sow thy field nor prune thy vineyard. And what's interesting about this is that 6 years they were to do their farming. But on the 7th year, they were to stop. They were to stop farming for a whole year, for the land to rest on the 7th year. And we will see, and I don't remember where it's at, but we'll run across it. One of the examples I wanted to mention to you is that as we'll get to it, I think, well, we may not, but we'll find it. We will get to it. I was trying to find it, but it's in 25, but we'll get to it. It's no rush. But the point I'm going to bring up, what's important about this, why it really looks like applicable some parts to us. 6 years they were to sow. Then seventh year was a Sabbath rest. Not seventh, just seventh day, seventh year. So every day of each one of those 6 years was still the seventh day, Sabbath. But on the seventh year, the whole entire year was a Sabbath. The land was to rest. This is the resting of the land, was the rest. And by the land resting, when we read, and you guys can go read through it until we get to it, because I don't want to be jumping the gun, but you'll see the blessings that Yah gave them in that 6th year. They wouldn't have to worry about anything for the next 3 years, going into the next period of time. Yah blessed them that 1 year, 3 years blessing. It reminds me of chapter 16. And like I say, we'll eventually talk about that. I don't know if we do it tonight, but we'll get to it where you'll see that in that 6th year, and in the 7th year, Yah is going to bless them for 3 years because they didn't do no farming. They didn't do anything in that 7th year, but he blessed them. So there's multitude of things that we can get out of that. One is faith, to believe. Now their livelihood in those days especially was predicated on farming and things of that sort. They would have to put their entire faith in everything into Yahuwah that 7th year, the whole entire 360 days. They had to put their whole faith in him. No farming, no sowing of the land, none of that kind of stuff. I want you all, just to give you an example, how Yah in the 7th year, they weren't to work, but then he gave them 3 years of blessing as if they had been farming, giving the fruit of the land. They can eat the meat, the animals, and they still did their offerings and all the stuff they would normally do, but they wouldn't do any farming. There would be no farming. The land is resting. And I just think that's very interesting. But when you go over, just give you an example how Yah operates. A simple example. I want you to go over to Exodus chapter 16, and I'm going to start there with you guys. Somebody, I want you all to read from verse 14 through verse 23. And then you all will see what I'm saying. How Yah will bless you in multiple things just by doing one thing. Just doing one thing. Being obedient in one thing, he can bless you with multitudes of things. So somebody read verse 14 through 23.
And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness, there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they say one to another, it is manna, for they rest not what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which Yahuwah hath given you to eat. This is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, and omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Pay ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet it in Omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered a little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hardened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bed worms and snake. And Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the sixth day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, This is that which Yahuwah has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto Yahuwah. Bake that which ye will bake today, and see it that ye will see it, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning.
Okay. See, when we obey, he told them, not to leave anything till the morning, or not to be gathering anything up the next day. Like say on a Thursday, don't be leaving it till the next morning. And they did that anyway, and that's why it wound up stinking, smelling like it is. He was providing that for them every day. They ate what he gave them that day, But come the sixth day, he gave them twice as much. So on Friday, he gave them twice as much so that they wouldn't be out there gathering anything on the Sabbath. So he gave them enough for Friday, and he gave them enough for Sabbath, and it didn't stink the next day. Because when they obeyed and did what he said to do, obey, each day you gather it up, each day except on the sixth day, you gather up basically twice as much because it would be saved over for the Sabbath day. Then when Sunday comes, you gather for Sunday, then for Monday, for Tuesday, like that. And you just follow that pattern. I look at the same thing here in this Jubilee. Same thing in the Jubilee. They were not to do any reaping or any of that sort in that 7th year. They did it all during each year, the 6 years. And then the 7th year was a rest. And look what it says in verse 5 and then 6 and 7. That which groweth of his own accord of thy harvest thou shalt not reap, neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed. And you look at that word, let me pull it up.
Brother Birch, on the YouTube, it's a split screen. So it's showing your EOS.
Oh, it shows.
YouTube.
It's showing a split screen. Okay, hold on a second. What about now? Thank you.
It's delayed, so I'll let you know.
It should change quickly, within 3 to 5 seconds. I don't know why it's taking that long.
It's up there now.
Okay, thanks. And that word undress, when it says neither gather the grapes of thy vine undressed, that means separate an unpruned vine, For it is a year of rest in the land. So when you go to verse 6, and the Sabbath of the land, which is the 7th year, and the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, for thee, and for thy servants and for thy maid, and for thy hired servants, and for thy stranger that sojourneth with thee. And verse 7, and for thy cattle, and for thy beasts that are in thy land shall all the increase thereof be meat. So in other words, everything that groweth of his own accord during that year would be meat for them and meat for everyone else. But they are not to be out there sowing or doing any of that stuff during the whole year with which they would normally be doing. You sow in one time of the season, and then you reap in another time of the season. So they're not going to be doing that. And you only, when I say season, you only got two times, summer and winter. So they're not going to be doing that. Whatever grows of itself and that looks right, pruned to eat, is for them and the strangers and the cattle, because the cattle have to eat like the grazing in the grass and things of that sort. Yah is providing all that for them without them having to do anything in that 7th year. Okay, so keep that going.
If we go
What's that?
back in that one chapter 16, that's
Where
where
you
the people.
at? Oh, in Exodus 16?
Yeah, when the people went back out trying to look for, I think he told them not to. Then that's when he got, mad with Moses, to tell them how long were people refused to obey his commandments.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and verse 27, 28.
27 and 28. Yeah. Yes. And so keep that in mind as we go through this. Now we hadn't even got to the Jubilee part. All they're talking about is the first 6 years, they do their thing. They do their farming. 7th year, they don't do nothing. No sowing, they don't do no farming. But anything that grows of itself, that's ripe and ready to eat like you would normally see, which Yah is allowing, he's going to allow that to happen. He's going to multiply that land. Just like in us. When we're obedient, he multiplied things in us. I mean, the grace and the mercy he has for us. Where is that verse that, let me see something. There's a verse that came to mind. I know of the verse, but I can't remember where it's at. Let me see if I can find it. The one I'm thinking of, at least. Luke 6:38. I know that verse came to mind when I started talking about how he multiplies and blesses us so much. Luke 6:38. It says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye meet, whither it shall be measured to you again." While this is talking about something different, I'm still thinking the fact that when we obey, when we do the right thing, Yah looks at that and it would be given to us. What would be given to us? It would be given us the abundance of what Yah has for us to do through obedience. So if we've fallen in his footsteps, if we're doing his will, if we not slacking in our responsibility in caring for others, doing the things for the poor, as Yahushua mentioned, all these different things. When we're doing these things, Yah makes it abundantly clear that if we're given, it's going to be given to us twofold, threefold, fivefold, whatever. So again, this Jubilee, it identifies quite a bit, actually. There's some key stuff dealing with the Jubilee. It represents liberation, freedom. We'll get to that eventually. It represents the restoration of the people of Israel. And we'll get to that as we go because it spans out through the whole chapter. So we'll get to those two key factors, liberation and restoration of the land and everything to the people. That is so important. They were allowed in that year of Jubilee to come out of slavery, to come out of servitude, to come out of that, return back to the land that you originally had. That's part of your heritage. You know when they went over into the promised land, when they went over into the Canaan land, that Yah gave them an inheritance. He divided their inheritance. He gave them different places of the land of Canaan that they were to be in, even outside of Canaan. Let me just find where they started distributing, where Joshua and them started distributing the land to the people. They started getting, he distributed the lands. If anybody know where it's at the top of your head, I think it's in Deuteronomy. Where it's actually in Deuteronomy where he starts to distribute the land. I think it's in Deuteronomy. Unless it's in Joshua. It might be in Joshua. It might be in Joshua. Let me see. Yeah. Can't read it all, though, but starting with chapter 18. In chapter 18, well, wait a minute. No, starting with chapter 15. Like you look at chapter 15, that's when the first division of the land really started with Caleb's inheritance, which started in chapter 14, verse 6. So really it started there. But then when they started dividing the tribes up, pretty much when Caleb came out, it started in chapter 15 with Judah. And then it went to some of the other tribes and started dividing the land all up. But when you look at chapter 14, verse 1, it tells you, it says, and these are the countries which the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the fathers and of the tribes of the children of Israel distributed for inheritance to them. In verse 2, and this is in Joshua 14, verse 2 now. By lot was their inheritance, as Yahuwah commanded by the hand of Moses for the 9 tribes and for the half-tribe. For Moses had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and a half-tribe on the other side of Jordan. But unto the Levites he gave none inheritance among them. And that's important to know about them because they are also talked about in this Jubilee, is the Levites. Then verse 4, for the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. Therefore they gave no part into the Levites in the land, except or save cities to dwell in with their suburbs for their cattle and for their inheritance and for their substance. That's also in the Jubilees we'll talk about. 5, as the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel did, and they divided the land. So hold on a second, I got to write down something. So that's chapter 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Even if you count the city of refuge, that's also mentioned in Jubilees. The Levite cities, that's also mentioned in Jubilees. So really, all the way, chapter 14, all the way through chapter 21 of Joshua deals with the distribution. Okay. So going back to Leviticus 25. Okay. Again, Jubilee, it represents liberation of those that's like in servitude or those that were in slavery in Jerusalem, in the camp, and restoration for the people of Israel. So they restored, they got their lands back. But the Jubilee talks about how that process worked. And that's what we're going to be eventually getting into as we go through this study. Can somebody, what I want to do now, what we're going to go through now a little bit, I don't know if you'll finish it, but generally the institution of Jubilee, how it actually worked. Now we go ready to go into the actual Jubilee. That's kind of covered through verses 8 to 22. That's kind of covered through 8 to 22 verses there. So we got an idea now that before the Jubilee, the very first 7 years, the first 6 years, they was a soul. The 7th year was a Sabbath of rest for the land. They would eat off the land of the natural things of itself. Nothing that they had sold, nothing, because they weren't the soul. And then the animals, and they still did all their sacrifices. All that stuff was still being done. All that was still being done. Which means that when they were doing the meat offering, that requires certain things, that all that was just naturally provided for them. So Yah did that for them in that 7th year. They had to have faith to believe that he was going to provide for them. So when I read that, then I get an understanding clearly, when we go over to like, and we won't go into it now, but when we go over to like the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, they really couldn't celebrate Jubilee because they had been taken off their inheritance. You got to have an inheritance. You got to have the land in order to be able to follow through with this Jubilee. That's why Nehemiah and Ezra reinstituted the laws of Moses, which is what Yah had given him in Mount Sinai. That's why it was reinstituted. That's why when you get to Nehemiah, and I think it's chapter 7 through verse chapter 13, you begin to see all the reinstitution of laws and everything dealing with bringing back what was done before they was taken into captivity. I mean, Jubilees open up a door for a lot of things, understanding a lot of stuff, even from the Ruach standpoint. So, I want somebody to read, let's see. Somebody read verse 8 through 8. Let's see, 8 through 10. Somebody can read verses 8 through 10 for me. Kind of like to do it like twice, let you all read it. And a lot of times just repeating over stuff really helps sink in too. So that's why I want you all to read it. And then if I need to read it again, which I'm going to read these again, these specific ones, because of the importance of it. But can somebody read these for me?
Okay. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee. 7 times 7 years. And the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 17th month, the seventh month, in the day of the torment, the day of torment, shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 15th, the 15th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all that the habitation thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family.
This is a big thing. This is what you just read right there is really what this Jubilee boils down to. This is really a special time. You know, I think about, when you was reading the part about the Jubilee, and thou shalt cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound. A few things come to mind. Number one is over in Numbers, chapter 10. It doesn't say here that they gathered together on there, but it makes me think about this. It had to be some special thing, because on chapter 10, Numbers 10, verse 2, it tells you when the trumpets are blowing. And I believe, and I didn't look to see which trumpet this was. Maybe I need to see what trumpet it is, whether it was the one of the goat of the goat, or whether it was the horns goat, or whether it was the two silver. Let me check real fast and see which horn this was, which trumpet it was. Make sure. It's in verse 9.
It says silver. I see verse. You say verse 2.
Yeah, verse 2 I know is the silver. That's the silver trumpet, that one there. But I'm talking about the one that's in Leviticus, the one that you just read. In Leviticus 25:9, that trumpet there. In 25:9, see, that's not the silver trumpet, that's the ram's horn, the goat's horn. So that's the same one we use. So they didn't have an assembly. They didn't come together in an assembly with that trumpet. They just blew the trumpet, but that trumpet must have had a certain sound to it. It must have had a certain sound, which takes me to another verse. So in verse 9, when it says, then shall thou cause the trumpet of Jubilee to sound on the 10th day in the 7th month. Now that's an assembly day, because the 7th month and 10th day is the Day of Atonement. So they had cycles. What they did was 6 years they sowed. The 7th year was a sabbatical. They did this 7 times. 7 times. A span of 49 years. Then the beginning of that 49th year, which would be the 50th year, beginning of the 50th year, they blew the trumpet. But it's the trumpet with the ram's horn. Just like we be blowing for an assembly here. They did the same thing. They blew the horn. But the first thing goes to my mind is 1 Corinthians 14:18. Things can have multiple meanings, but this is the one that came to mind. When I saw that, I thought about this in my studies. Even though it says, start with verse 7, and even things without life give it sound, whether pipe or harp, except they give a distinction in the sound. How should it be known what is piped or harped? For if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to battle. So obviously this was not an uncertain sound. This was a certain sound. This is a sound that I believe that these guys, that whoever blew the trumpet blew, and they already knew that the 50th year was coming up because they had already passed 7 years, 7 sabbaticals, 7 sabbatical years. And at the end of that last sabbatical, at the end of that last period, going into the beginning of that 50th sabbatical year, they then did what you see there in verse 10. So I believe that it was certain sound that was blown that was different than, say, calling of the assembly and some of these other things. I think it was a certain sound because this was a huge, for the children of Israel, this was a huge event. This was a gigantic event for them because verse 10 tells you how relevant and how important this event was. It says, and he shall hallow the 50th year. So the starting of that 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land and to all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee, a very happy moment, a rejoiceful moment, a great time of rejoicing, because ye shall return every man into his possession. So whatever land that the man could not redeem back doing before the year of Jubilee, he can now get that back. And he shall return every man to his family. So whatever man, for example, was poor and couldn't take care of his land and had to leave his land for whatever reason and sell it to someone, then if he could not buy it back, or kinsmen couldn't buy it back, then at the 50th year, the year of Jubilee, hallelujah, they all can get it back. This was a glorious day. It was the beginning first day, but it was a whole year. It was glorious. Not a sabbatical, even though we know that the Sabbath, 7-day Sabbath, was still kept in that time frame, in that year. We know that. That never stopped. But this is the beginning, a certain sound of the horn blown, the ram's horn blown, the shofar blown. And that horn, when it blew, they knew that, just think about the joy they had. And where the Ruach comes in at with me is the fact that here we are today, and we don't really have any inheritance. Other than, we don't have any inheritance. You got people out here that own 1,000 acres and 2,000 acres and 5,000 acres and all kinds. One person owning all that, and then other ones not owning anything, or maybe 1 or 2 acres. What they did with the year of Jubilee, because when they originally divided up the inheritance of whatever Simeon family had, whatever inheritance Judah family had, whatever inheritance Naphtali family had, those families' inheritance, they kept that inheritance. So whatever part had to wind up being sold because whoever couldn't keep it, they then, later on, if they can redeem it back, we're going to read it, we'll see all that as we go through this lesson, they can redeem it back, and if they weren't able to redeem it back, or kinsmen weren't able to redeem it back, it went back to the original owner, because he's now get his land, he gets back to his property. Everything starts like Yah had divided it all over again. It starts back new. And that's what's going to happen when we get to heaven. That we're going to have an inheritance. Yah is going to give us an inheritance in that place called heaven. We will not have to worry about being separated or isolated because we're not respected for whatever reason. Yah has no respect to person. He is going to allow us to build our own house. He's going to give us inheritance. That's why the tabernacles play a major role. That's why that plays a major role. I can see from the Ruach standpoint why the Jubilees play a major role. Because from the Ruach standpoint, you can see how that ties into what it should have been in the beginning. In the beginning, man and woman had an inheritance. They had the Garden of Eden. They did exactly what the children of Israel did, and they forfeited that right to have the land that Yah gave them because of their disobedience. So the woman and man driven out of the garden, now when we get to the end and Yahushua comes back, he is going to give us the land in the place called heaven. We're going to have an inheritance. We're going to have an inheritance called heaven. That's why the Jubilees are so important from the Ruach standpoint. Obviously, we're not Levites. Obviously, we don't have to depend on any priests. Obviously, we don't have the inheritance like was given to us. But we're going to have the heavenly inheritance. And that's going to be greater than any earthly. That's going to be any greatly tormented earthly inheritance that's on this earth right now. We're going to have the ultimate inheritance. And guess what? We don't have to worry about anybody coming in and invading and taking away. We don't have to worry about the safety, because that's mentioned also in Jubilee about safety. We don't have to worry about all that. We don't have to worry about whether we'll be driven off our land. We don't have to be worrying about whether we'll get sick or whether we'll die. We don't have to worry about any of that, because when Yah places us in our inheritance, it's going to be ours for eternity. Not eternity as long as something exists, but eternity forever as forever with no time. That's the reason why this Jubilee is so important. Understanding the Ruach behind the meaning of it. When I read this more and more, I can begin to see why Yah put this in place. It was never intended for this world to be isolated with certain people having inheritance, having land, and then you got others that don't have nothing. Yah never intended for it to be that way. That's the reason why when he brought them over into Israel, when he brought them over into the Canaan land, he divided it up based on their size. Judah was bigger, so Judah inheritance would be bigger than Benjamin inheritance. If you go and look at a map of the land that they got, when it was distributed, you will see who was the bigger ones. And that's the way Yah distributed the land. If you got 25, if he's giving everybody 1 acre, this is an example. If he's giving everybody 1 acre, based on the size of your family, if every person that's in your family, every man, if there's 200 men, he gave you 200 acres. If there's only 20 men in your camp or your tribe, then he gave you 20 acres. It's all still based on everybody getting an acre. He still gave equal shares to everyone. That is not the way society is set up today. It's given to the people that have and not to the have-nots. And that was never intended, and that's what Jubilee was, to bring to reset and bring everything back to what it should be. He never wanted to be slavery. He never wanted to be servants. None of this kind of stuff. We're not going to be slaves in heaven. But he had to have a system for when that did occur, because people couldn't take care of themselves and had to go work for someone. He put it in place that those people, yes, they're working for you, but they are to be treated like human beings and not to be treated different because they don't have what you have. And then when the time runs out and they're not able to redeem what they lost because of whatever their situation was, before Jubilee, guess what? Jubilee is theirs again. It's back in their hands, and they're back with their families.
Hey, Brother Bert.
Yes.
That's the Bible of I don't think it's probably not the same thing, but when what's his name? Was it Jacob had to serve? He wanted Rachel. He had to serve 7 years. It's not the same, but remember we had to did 7 years, and he got Leah. Then he did another 7 years. He got Rachel.
Oh, you talking about when he had, you're talking about when he went to go find a wife, and he wound up working for Laban. And he worked 7 years for Rachel, but Laban tricked him. And wind up, and then bridal night or whatever you want to call that, he substituted Rachel with Leah. And he wound up having to work 7 more years. I believe this is how the story went. He wound up having to work 7 more years, a total of 14 years. The scripture says, if I remember correctly, he worked 14 years, 10 years. Rephrase. He labored for 14 years, and his wages changed 10 times. All that for the hand of Rachel. And of course, he wound up getting Rachel after all that. But the point being, he had to wind up working extra. It doesn't really tie into this per se, but what's interesting is 7. That number 7. That number 7 always means completion. Everything is 7s here. Yeah. That's what's interesting about that story. It could have been 5 years, 3 years, but it was 7. 2 7s. Here we got 7. We got 7 7s. So, Yah does everything in completion. Everything's completed. So, I got some other texts I want you all to look at. Just some text about being joyful and happy and stuff like this is one text. I'm thinking about Psalms. Go to Psalms 51:8. Psalms 51:8. Somebody want to read that for me?
Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which thou hast broken may rejoice.
We are to rejoice and be glad and be happy and rejoice. And that's going to be a rejoiceful time for us because remember, what did it tell us? What did it tell us over there in 1 Thessalonians 4, 13, 18? Remember what it says about the trumpet? It tells us that in 1 Thessalonians, remember it talks about the trumpet? 1 Thessalonians 4, 1 Thessalonians 4, 16, when it talks about and for the Lord shall descend from heaven with the shout and the voice of the archangel and with the trump of Yah, and the dead in Yahushua shall rise first. And then we got those 7 trumpets over there, again, the number 7. We got those 7 trumpets over there in Revelation 8, in Revelation 8 and 9. These trumpets play a major role here at the end. It plays a major role. Because when the trumpets sound during the Jubilee, you can equate that. See, when the trumpets sound in the Jubilee, it was freedom for the people. They went back and they got their inheritance back. When Yahushua comes and the sound of the trumpet, when he comes back, we're going to get freedom. We're going to get out of this world, everybody. That's going to be freedom to us. Right now, we're not in freedom. But we're going to get our freedom. And we're going to be able to get our inheritance. That's why we're going to be able to build our own homes. When you go over to Isaiah 65, go to Isaiah 65. Isaiah 65 and look at verse 21 and 22. Isaiah 65, 21 and 22. And it says, and they shall build houses and inhabit them. And we know that's talking about the new heaven and earth because it mentions that in the first verse. That he's going to create a new heaven and new earth. And he just goes down to different stuff. They shall build houses and inhabit them. Who is they? The people that's in heaven. And they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another one eat. For as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and my elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They're going to enjoy it. It's going to be a wonderful time. It's going to be a blessed time. It's going to be a time to look forward to. How wonderful it's going to be that day when it comes. Go back to Leviticus 25. Go back to Leviticus 25. I like how in verse 10 it says at the very end, the end part of that verse, well, let's just read over it. It says that ye shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land and to all the inhabitants thereof. And it shall be a jubilee unto you. And ye shall read this part, and ye shall return every man unto his possession. Whatever land he had before he sold it to you and couldn't get it back. He can get it back on Jubilee. You got to give it back to him. And then it addresses the attitude you're supposed to have too and give it back. It's in here too. It's Jubilee. I mean, I can see why it's 55 verses. It goes into details as we continue reading through this, just real quick, when I mentioned to you all about how Yah is going to bless them, like in 6 years they do all their sowing and their farming, but then in the 7th year they do nothing. Whatever they eat is that was of itself. Other words, what Yah blessed them with, not from their own hands. And I told you that Yah is going to bless them with 3 years of additional to that because of that. Look at verse, and we're going to go back to over to 10, but look at verse 21. That's the one I was telling you about. He says, then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for 3 years. Look at the blessings he's going to give them. It's 6th year. In that 6th year, he's going to give them blessing for 3 more years. Just because you didn't touch your land, didn't know farming, none of that's done. You've been obedient. Just like it was with the manna. He give you two days instead of 1. This is Yah all by himself. Nobody else could do that but him. Nobody else can promise something and keep his promise. And without a doubt, you know he's gonna follow through. Nobody else does that like him. So going back over here to verse 11 now. And a jubilee shall that 50 year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of the vine undressed. Undressed. got to be just, it's undressed. In other words, it's not right yet. You don't do it when it's that way. But 12, for it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase throughout the field. Whatever is right, whatever is ready to eat, like you would normally do when you go and reap, that's what you're going to be eating. But instead of you doing it, instead of you planting it, Yah say he'll take care of it. He'll let everything grow naturally like it would if you were out there. Oh my goodness. Whew. I don't. Anyway, let me just continue on. Come get myself all worked up. Because this just tell you the power of Yahuwah. How we just don't know how blessed we are. We don't realize how blessed we are. We don't realize we should really feel bad and ask Yah to help those people out here who don't know him. We really need to be praying for them. We really do. Because they have no clue what they're missing out on. None. Yeah, they have no idea. So, oh boy. They need to make sure in that special year of Jubilee, there's a restoring of the land to the people that originally owned it. If they can't get it taken care of before those 50 years that time is in it, before that time is up, they'll get it back in the year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee. Somebody saying something? Let's see. Verse 13. So in the year of Jubilee, ye shall return every man into his possession. Every man to his possession. Every man to his possession. This is a very important year. It was a very important year for the people. And I want to look at verse 14 through 17 now. It says, and if thou, this is what I was mentioning to you before, and if thou sell aught only thy neighbor, or buyeth aught of thy neighbor's hand, ye shall not oppress one another. Ye shall not oppress. If somebody in Jubilee come, it is mandatory. It is authorized by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It is authorized. It's etched in his word that that land is going back to that person. And you're not to oppress him. You're not to make him feel bad. You're not to say you don't deserve to get this land back. You are not to act as many act today. You're not to act that way. Yahuwah gives us stuff. When we make it into the kingdom, and I'm praying we all do, and he gives us an inheritance, you think we deserve that? But he's going to give us an inheritance. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness there is his. That's why when I hear them talk about, this is my land, I own it, you don't own nothing. You may think you own it, you don't own nothing. My Father which is in heaven owns everything. And the only reason you got it is on borrowed time. Because what you have right now is going to be destroyed, and it's going to be a new earth, new heaven, and the inheritance of that new earth is going to be his people, and they don't have to worry about being oppressed. They don't have to worry about the uncle's brother selling it to this person. Then, like now, you shouldn't have to be worried about the uncle selling it to this person, and the brother got mad because he didn't think he should have it. All this foolishness goes on nowadays. They had a set law of how they were supposed to distribute it and how they were supposed to handle sales. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the other. I think it's in chapter 27, I think it is, which I haven't put together yet. Still working on this. Just put together as Yah gives it to me. So I don't know how long this is going to last. So I'm going to finish reading the verses 15, 16, and 17. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the fruits he shall sell unto thee. According to the multitude of the years thou shalt increase the price thereof, and according to the fewness of years thou shalt diminish the price of it. For according to the number of the years of the fruit doeth he sell it unto thee. So you know now the way it operates. If you buy land somewhere, the house could be, we're doing everything. We're not doing nothing the way y'all set this up. The way it's done now primarily, and whoever's a realtor can probably validate this pretty much, whoever sells real estate and any of this kind of stuff. If I got a house, if I bought a house and that house is 20 years old today, and 30 years from now I sell it, that house is older. But most likely I can sell it for much higher than I bought it for because of the market value. The market value of the house. Here, that wasn't done that way. Here, it was done according. Jubilee was the governing factor. Even if they bought property during the time before Jubilee came, they was to determine how much they got out of the land as time got closer to Jubilee. It decreased in time, not increased, it decreased, which means that in essence in our mind, the value of it would seem like it would be lesser, not more. But that's the way they did it there, because it says, according to the multitude of years, thou shalt increase the price. So if you bought it in the first 6 years of that 50, you sold it, it would value more then than it would if you bought it in the last 7 years before Jubilee, because it's older. And that whole thing, because that's what it's saying. And according to the fewness of years, thou shalt diminish the price of it, according to the number of years of the fruit do he sell into the land. So however much products he got, the fruit, what he bared out of that land, and obviously he's going to bear fewer amount of stuff and the years get closer to Jubilee. They had a process. And this process that we're reading here is what Yah gave Moses in Mount Sinai. This is what we're reading is not something that Moses came up with. This is something that was in the ordinances that Yah gave Moses. So this thing is serious here. So we got a 7-year cycle. 6 years of farming, 7 years sabbatical year. 7 times that is 49. The completion of the 49, the beginning of the 50th year, they blow the trumpet. And it's the ram's horn. It's the shofar. They blow it. And when they blow the shofar, that is a sign of freedom. All the slaves, all the servants that's working for whoever they're working for can now return back to their families. They can return back and live off their land. that was sold for whatever reason because they couldn't keep it up, or whatever reason was. They redeem it back. That's what redeem. They get it back. And that was the intention and what the Jubilee was. To put everything back to the status quo. Put everything back the way it was. Not have this one over here got this much, and that one over here got that much, and this person over here got that much. Unequally balanced. No. Yeah, one nation, one tribe may have more than others. That's only because the one tribe is bigger than the other tribe. It's larger than the other tribe. That's how it was distributed. It wasn't distributed because we got 1,000 acres to give, and because you're a larger tribe, we're going to give you 900 and give them just 100. No, that ain't the way it worked. It ain't work like that. That's the way society is today. Society don't care about anybody and what they have. That tells you that if Yah gave the commands in Mount Sinai for the condition of Jubilee and how things was to work, he's telling us today, the intent and the Ruach meaning behind this Jubilee is that one day we're all going to be together in the land that he gave us. It's going to be an inheritance. We're going to be one family. One family. Just like instead of the children of Israel, it's going to be the Ruach, the children of Yahushua. That is who it's going to be. But it's going to be one family. We're going to have inheritance. It's going to be equally shared. Yah's not. Why do we know it's going to be equally shared? Because he tells us over there in Acts 10:34, he has no respect of persons. So we know if he has no respect of persons here, he will not have any respect of persons in heaven. That's how we know. Again, in verse 17, ye shall not therefore oppress one another, but thou shalt fear thy Yah, for I am Yahuwah, your Yah. See, that's important right there. That's important because in everything that we do in our lives, we should always remember what thus saith Yahuwah. Because when we put into our minds and our hearts what thus saith Yahuwah, we will never oppress anybody. We will never bring terror on someone. We would never hurt anyone like that. We would never take from someone and don't care how their feelings are. We would never do that. That's why it says, fear the Lord. See, fearing of Yah is the beginning of knowledge. Scriptures tell us that over in, is it Proverbs 1:7? That's what that go to my mind. Proverbs 1:7. Now, he has not given us the spirit of fear amongst each other, obviously, because he tells us that. But he says, Proverbs 1:7, the fear of Yahuwah is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. This is instructions that they got. Only a fool will not listen to his instruction. Only a fool said that there's no God or no Yah. Only a fool does that. Only a fool is one that doesn't, that despises wisdom and instruction. Anybody who despised the instructions that Yah gave him through the ordinances at that time was foolish. Somebody saying something? Yeah. Anybody who looked upon you, anybody who treated any of their brothers and sisters in a way that oppressed them or any kind of fashion, because a lot of stuff going today, you can sell something to somebody and there's a lot of back talk, a lot of whispering and all this kind of stuff. Y'all say all that stuff. No, there's no oppression. There's nobody saying anything bad, negative about anything. They're to redeem what they have, that they go back to their family. It's to start over again with them. And you don't want to hear no back talk. Because that's what people do. They like to talk.
Hey, Brother Birch.
Yes.
That's about the in Acts when they try to sell, not to war and try to sell the land more than it was.
Yes. Not supposed to do that. I have well, not necessarily example of that, but I have an example next week that gives an example in the scriptures of how important inheritance was when somebody tried to do something similar to what you just said. And I think it's going to be next week, not next week, not tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow, or I don't know when I'm going to get to that. Some point I'm going to get to it. Got quite a bit of stuff here. So we're going to stop here at verse 17, at verse 17. Is there anything that anybody has that you'd like to share with us? I do want to, you know what? I think I will mention the one thing. I think I will mention what I just said, example, because I think I just found it here. And actually, I was planning to say this, actually. Go to Nehemiah. I think it's Nehemiah. Go to Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter, go to chapter 5. I think this is the one here. I think it is. And perhaps this is what it's referring to. It says in verse 15, because remember, this is during the time of Nehemiah, the rebuilding of the temple and all that stuff there. And if you look at verse 15, it says, but the former governors that had been before me, this is Nehemiah speaking, were chargeable unto the people, and had taken them bread and wine, besides 40 shekels of silver. So they really was doing them pretty bad. Even their servants bear rule over the people, but so did not I, because of the fear of Yah. So in other words, he didn't take from the people. He wasn't charging the people. Maybe this is what he's referring to here. He wasn't taking advantage of the people because he could. He feared Yah. So if you fear Yah, then you're not going to do anything that's going to harm anyone, what I was mentioning earlier. And maybe this is implied in this pretty much, something similar to that. I apply that to more like that there. He did not oppress those because he had power or whatever it would be. When he was rebuilding the temple, he didn't exert any power over anybody, getting more out of that than what Yah gave him to do, his mission to do. He was responsible. He feared Yah. That's the beginning of knowledge. And he understood that. So, yeah. So yeah, we're gonna start part 14, Yah willing. I'm planning part 14 tomorrow, same time, 6:30 p.m. It really almost got to really do it this way because I think there's still, there's still a good amount left to cover here. So I don't know how long this is going to take, but we'll just do it. We'll see whatever Yah has for us. We'll keep rolling. So, all right. So this is, you know what? Yeah. We'll stop here. So do anybody have anything? Any questions, any comments, anything that you might want to address or come up on, that, but the Jubilee, it's quite clear to me, and it's easy to apply it to where we at right now in life, in this world today. But does the actual Jubilee from the standpoint of where it applied then applies now, should we be doing it? That's what we'll find out when we get to the comparison of the new covenant. So, if we don't have anything else, I will close out. We have prayer. Father in heaven, again, we ask that you would have mercy on us as we continue to study your word. Be with us and guide us and strengthen us and help us, Yah, that we will understand and know the difference between right and wrong, and know the difference between what you commanded us to do and what you see is not fit for us, not necessary for us to do now. But we know, Yah, you have the answer to everything. Putting together the words that what people had to adhere to through these ordinances and stuff. Only you could do that. Man can't put nothing together like this where it lines up. And we thank you for that. We thank you for giving us the understanding that as we study, we have to lean on you to help us to understand. We have to lean on the Ruach. Pray that you be each and last one of us here that's online, be with our families, guide us and strengthen us. And give us the peace that passeth all understanding. We ask this in your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach's name, we do pray. So be it.
Amen. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I know you saw. I thought you fell asleep.
All right.
What? I'm going to call you in a minute. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night. Have yourselves a wonderful day. And until we meet tomorrow, y'all willing.
Bye.